the first thing for the years, and the regular Sunday team will be helping to lead the. So if you'd like to begin by bowing. Ato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa Bhagavato Buddhang Saranang Sanghang Saranang Gacchami Dutiyampi Dhammang Saranang Gacchami Dutiyampi Sanghang Saranang Gacchami Anadipata Verapmani Kame Sumichachara Verapmani Sikha Pancha Sikha Padani Silena Sugatinyanti Silena Poga Sambada Silena Nibutinyanti Tasambada Silena Nibutinyanti Tasama. Well, people are just preparing those dedications and such like, just to let the people know who've just come this afternoon. Of Haribo. So for those of you who were maybe not here this morning, just to let you know that at 2 o'clock, Tancho Kun Prom Fajirian, otherwise known last year, young Jasmine, so her birthday was on the 19th, and also blessings for Nicholas Farrow, her younger brother, whose birthday is on the 13th of May. Also like to dedicate blessings for Linda Tavara Dunan, who's a very dear old friend of the Sangha, one of the mothers of the Amaravati family camp from many years back. She's very seriously ill in hospital at the moment with cancer that's spread from her liver to her lungs and her spine. And so she is got a loving family around her, but she was very appreciative of our blessings today. Also, Adana is being offered today with the wish, may the merits we gained by carrying out the offerings today on the Visākha Puja be rejoiced in by all our relatives: Ramani, Anura, Julie, Chris, Erandi, Chantal, Anjana, Grandma Malini, Grandma Maureen, and everyone in the family. Din be well, healthy, and happy. Also, blessings are dedicated for Mrs. Kyo. Also, blessings are dedicated to Lionel, Kate, Rui. Also, we dedicate blessings today for the well-being of dear friend Claudio, who is going through a difficult time. With the wish, may he and all creatures be well and find their way to awakening. That's from Eleonora. And also, Dana is being offered today, dedicated and wishing blessings for Kuen Wong, Yang Yang, Shaner, Bebe, Yan Li, Chao Kwai, Siu. May all be well and happy. Also, Dana is being offered by Sasima Porn and Joshua Robinson and family, Usa Sasim Wimon Sutsawat, on the occasion of Sasima Porn's birthday. Also dedicated Anumodana and blessings are wished for all sentient beings. May all be well and safe. May all be. So to the Sunday home team from Amaravati, they've all come out and made many offerings to help support the community and the event today. Also, dedicate blessings for Mr. Jina Das Barua, who was one of the great supporters of this project from many years ago. He passed away last year, so from the Barua family, Jina Das Barua. And lastly, dedicate blessings for our dear friend Martin Kaufman, who's a very dedicated supporter and attender of events here at Amaravati. He's just had another fall, or a couple of falls, and he's been taken to hospital with some injuries. He's keen to get home as soon as possible, but he's got some broken ribs. So from David and Mariana, they ask us to dedicate blessings for Martin Kaufman today. So without further ado, we will offer the Anumodana now. So anyone who's doing that wants to do the water pouring, then please just begin that as I start the chanting. Yatha varevaha pura paripurandi sakarang evamewa hitorinang petanang upakavati Ichitang patitang tumhang kippameva samichatu sabe parentu sankappa chando panraso yata manicho teraso yata sabaroko vinasatu Mate bhavat vandarayo sukidikayu kopava Abhivadanassilesa nityang vudhapachahino Chataro dhamma vadandi ayuvano sukhang Balang atasime akasime nyatimita sakachame petanang dakinang daja pubekata manusarang nahironang vasokowa yavanya paridevana Natang beta namataya ewang didan dinyatayo ayanchakko dakina dinna sangami supatitita dikharatang hitaya sa thana sopakapati sonyati dhammo chahayang nidasito petana puja chakata ulara Balancha bhikkhunam anuparinang tumhe punyang basutang anapakandi pavatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata sabba buddhanubhavena sada soti bhavantu te pavatu sabba mangalang rakantu sabba devata Sabba Dhamma Nupavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te Bhavatu Sabba Mangalang Rakantu Sabba Devata Sabba Sangha Nupavena Sada Soti Bhavantu Te. Also today we are very blessed to have the presence of Luang Por Sumedho, who's been here for the last few days. He's come to spend a bit of time with Luang Por Sumedho before Luang Por Sumedho goes on his travels. So I'd like to invite Luang Por Sumedho to offer a few reflections for us on this occasion. So please, if you'd be so kind.
So, welcome everyone. I hear this is the first big event, Amaravati, for a long while, and so it's quite a happy gathering. And it's beautiful to see we've all taken the precepts today. The bhikkhus and Siddharan and Anigarikas have taken their precepts, lay people have taken their precepts, so now we're abiding in the precept realm, in the realm of moral action, moral purity. And now it's time to enter the realm of pure awareness. Purifying action, now purifying awareness. And this is, so just take some time, and though we're plenty of people around this particular moment, just let everybody else fade out and draw your attention back, finding where your body is, how you can feel it, and finding this very important spinal axis, so you're sitting up in your chair, on your cushion. Don't strain yourself, just recognize that central pivot which connects your head to the ground. It's quiet, steady, it's always there. It's a central axis. All the senses take us away from this. This is so we have to draw our attention back to that place from the back of your head right down to your tail and even down to your feet. You just spend some time drawing your energy, drawing your awareness back to that. And let the sense world and the ideas and the hopes and the memories and the concerns, just for a moment, let them fade. Just concentrate on purifying your awareness down to a very simple state. Very simple, stable state. Not a single point, drawing within, relaxing your skin, your face, feeling safe, what space around you. You don't have to concern yourself with other people. And as you can feel your energy change and you feel more settled. You feel your energy change, you feel more settled. Take your time. And then gradually allow your heart to open. And all of you have made dedications of good wishes to your friends and relatives So you know what that is. That place of aspiration, kindness, integrity. Open your heart within your body. You've got that steady place. Discard the thoughts, discard the past, discard the future. Open into presence. Open your heart into presence. And keep discarding and relaxing thoughts, concerns, the future, the past, other people, even yourself, because all of these are illusions that will pass. In pure awareness, all this passes. And this is the way to Amaravati, the deathless realm. So let's take a few moments just tuning in, picking up that theme. We're not clinging externally or internally, just balanced, open, warm-hearted. Find it difficult, just see if you can feel the simple rhythm of your breathing. And this is like being rocked, gently rocked, as if you're in your mother's arms, just feeling that breathing, the rhythm, steady, comfortable, soothing, allowing the world to cease.
The Luang Por Sumedho should be here in a moment. We had a few technical issues with transferring the sound and the video to the sala, the old sala. That's now been resolved, I'm told, by our tech team, so that the Dhamma talk and to be seen and heard is now available in the old sala as well as the temple. So those of you who gave up on the sala connection, then please go and try that again. And but those of you who are settled here in the temple, please make yourselves comfortable. Luang Por is just arriving, so please, when he comes, we will be paying our respects to him. And then also, once the Dhamma talk is over, be an opportunity for us to ask for forgiveness and take leave as he's setting off early tomorrow morning.
Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. today is the celebration of the birth, enlightenment, and death of Gautama the Buddha. And so this is, it's good to see so many people come after several years of lockdown and quarantine and all the COVID pandemic problems, when we had to close the monastery. And so now it's pandemics come and go, or they change. Old age, sickness, and death is the way that we reflect on this life experience of being a human being here and now. And so in this particular tradition, Theravada Pali Buddhism, the celebration of the birth and the passing away, and we all have experienced birth because we're physically here and now conscious forms in space. And in the future we'll all die. We know that. That's in the future, the perception of death. And enlightenment is always about here and now. So when we put together on Visākha Puja the birth, enlightenment, and death, these perceptions, very important to reflect upon, because the past is, we were born, that's our past. And none of us remember when we were born, because we had no language, no ability to remember anything when we're born. But we can assume that we have been born because this physical body is apparent here and now in this particular space at this time. And then the perception of in the future we're going to die. So birth and death is the result of, death is a result of being born. And this is about physical bodies, about sankharas, about conditions, about phenomena. And so the ignorance that the Buddha pointed to break through the ignorant assumption that we are the actual physical body that was born in the past and will die in the future, is the reality of enlightenment, seeing through the illusions we create about ourselves and the world we live in. So in the tradition of Theravada Buddhism, when we think of Prince Siddhartha, Gautama, becoming enlightened, the physical body was born just like your body and my body, human form. That was 2,565 years ago. So that's the past. When we think of the past, we think of 2,564 years as a long time. Then we've recorded that, the birth and the death of the Buddha. But enlightenment is what we're really interested in, why we come to monasteries, celebrate this particular event of Visākha Puja. Why we go to temples and monasteries. So as long as we are identified with the birth of the physical body, as that's what our identity is, and then the future of this body is old age, sickness, and death. And that's the future. So like COVID-19, a pandemic was just part of the process of learning about the way it is in these forms, these mortal forms that we are very much attached to and identify with. And so in the Buddhist teaching, basic teaching is about breaking down these illusions we have about ourselves and the world that we believe is our reality. Because the world is something we create in our mind. We see the world as something out there, the world external. So we come to Amaravati in Hertfordshire, and then, so we give names to these locations on planet Earth. There's endless conflicts around what belongs to who, about the war in Ukraine, and is Ukraine belong to Russia or Ukraine independent? These are the world that we create with our thoughts, our perceptions, our conditioning. So there's a whole history in the scriptures. The Tripitaka, there's endless war problems at the time of the Buddha's life, kingdoms and people fighting with each other because this basic illusion of an identification with conditions that are very unstable and uncertain. And then we identify solely with the four elements, the earth, fire, water, and air elements. Our bodies are this is important. Passport, we have to have a photograph of our face on the passport. And then that's my face as I look at my own passport. So on the conventional level, the convention of realities of life are, some are good, some are skillful, some are not very good, some are even terrible. Because the conditioned realm is like that. It goes from the best possibilities to the worst, to good and evil, right and wrong, good and bad. And so we live in a world that is constantly something to be frightened of. So fear is a common emotion, a kind of primal emotion that we experience in life. Even in the security of a safe place and a safe relationship. Like the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic, that's scary. When you hear how many people die in the UK in one day, and the statistics are recited on the media, so we hear all this news about death and due to this mysterious virus that has suddenly descended upon us, and who's to blame for it? So there's a lot of speculation about who really spread this pandemic, this virus, who's to blame, and so on the media there's endless discussions. But in terms of Dhamma, pandemics are part of nature. The conditioned realm is about being born and about growing old. Like nothing, like a newborn baby immediately starts growing up. You don't remain a baby very long, then you're a child and onward. And so we find birth something very attractive usually. Birth is, we love to look at babies, and babies are very beautiful, And when somebody has a baby, we celebrate that birth, because this is something that we can relate to as beautiful in our lives. The birth of a human child, generally speaking, of course. But death is something we don't really like to talk about, because it's in the future. It's not beautiful. You're looking at old people, at corpses. They don't have the same effect as a baby. So death is in the future. That's frightening. The future is fraught with the problems of growing old, physical body weakening, senses diminishing, just the experience of life, seeing our parents get old and die, and the friends we had when we were young passing away. This is a part of the human experience, that if we grow old, we live long enough, we experience these kind of unpleasant conditions, which are a part of the conditioned realm. It's natural. It's not, nobody's to blame for it, it's just the way it is. And so you hear on the radio and television various attempts by scientists and so on to extend lifespan, to stop the aging process, to get rid of disease. And, one feels, when I was young, we were hoping by this time, by this year 2022, that they'd have a cure for almost everything. That cancer would no longer be a problem for anybody, they'd find a cure for it, and all other diseases. And there was great optimism, because back in 1950, 2022 seemed, a very long time. By that time, modern science would solve all these problems with sickness and disease and the aging process. But this is not Dhamma, this is not the way it is. This is the way we think, and we create illusions about it in hopes that everything will die at a ripe old age in good health and in good appearance, without any pain, and die in a silent, peaceful state is a wish we all have when that moment in our life comes. But the opportunity we face here and now is always Dhamma, ultimate reality, which is here and now. It's not something far away that you have to get. Don't think of coming back in another life to get enlightened, because the Buddhist teachings are pointing to the present as a way to realize the illusions that we hold to and believe in, see through them, and this is called enlightenment. So this is, during my life as a Buddhist monk, I really devoted myself to investigating the Four Noble Truths. So most of what I talk about is from that kind of insights, from that very first sermon, the basic teaching of the Buddha as what was established in this tradition. So this is, enlightenment is here and now rather than in the future or in the next lifetime. We might think, I don't have enough accumulated merit in this lifetime to become enlightened. And so we create a sense of ourselves as a person, as a separate person, separate form in space. We believe that we are what our thoughts are, what our memories are. And that sense of, I don't have enough accumulated virtue to become enlightened in this lifetime, is what we call proliferation, conceptual proliferation. It's the way we think and what we believe in due to the basic illusions about ourselves being this mortal form. So Visākha Puja is a day to celebrate this teaching of the Buddha, the actual, in history, recorded history, in the Pali Sanskrit languages of ancient India, this particular teaching is about waking up to the way it is. Dhamma is apparent here and now, so it's not, it's not something that we can imagine. Because imagination takes thought. You have to think about enlightenment as something that you don't have, that you've got to get. And so this basic sense of a separate self, who's flawed, who has problems, who doesn't have enough virtues, who hasn't led a good enough life, who's not wise, these are all perceptions created after we're born through believing in this basic illusion that we're this limited form, this human form that was born, grows up, gets old, gets sick and dies. So in the Four Noble Truths, the very first noble truth is the reality of suffering, because this realm that we experience, that we're identified with, is all about suffering. Old age, sickness, death is suffering. Birth, even though we don't remember it, it's a tremendous experience for a woman to give birth to a child, to a baby. This men don't have to do, don't have to experience. But then the baby itself is a completely helpless, conscious form. Can't feed itself, can't walk, can't think, doesn't have a language, doesn't have a sense of its separateness yet, dependent solely upon a mother. The mother is a absolutely important other form in this baby's life to provide the basic needs of nourishment and shelter and protection. Because even though the baby's fully conscious here and now, the form itself is infantile. It's not a form that can assert independence. It's always totally dependent on others for survival. But the consciousness, the baby's consciousness, isn't dependent. So it has a kind of, due to the species, the mammalian species, the human form, we have a kind of protective. We know when we're hungry, when we're sleepy. We don't have a language. A baby can't tell its mother it's sleepy, but it has ways of notifying. That comes naturally just through the form of the infant that's fully conscious, like we all are. This consciousness then is not individual. It's not personal. It's not a baby, but the form of a baby is just that limited form of a human child. So then, of course, the inevitable growth starts taking place. We grow up. We form a sense of ourself according to the culture, the religion that we're conditioned by. We form, these identities with our gender, with our appearance, with our race, with our nationality. All these are acquired identities that we hold to and will fight for and die for. Like what's happening in Ukraine at this time. People are being killed. And Ukrainian soldiers are, due to their conditioning, are fighting, willing to die for this sense of being Ukraine and not Russia. And then Russians have the same, their identity is with Russia. So this is acquired identities. These aren't ultimate truths. These are national identities that we're willing to sacrifice our lives for, devote our lives toward independence, kind of noble ideals and freedom and democracy. So the world goes on, but now is a time at a day like this to reflect on the world that we live in, that we experience through these forms. And we can see the forms are all different, like everybody sitting here in the temple has a different form. No two people look the same. So the forms are different, the personalities are different, the identities are different. Amaravati is very international. The Sangha itself is very international. Conditioned in different ways, about what's right and wrong and who's to blame, and the history of a particular nation we've been conditioned by to believe in and or disbelieve if we want. So much of our conditioning is based on illusions and on fantasies. That is part of nationalism, patriotism. The great past, how we were great in the past, or great empire, or very powerful, or very civilized, and we can, being an American, as my basic conditioning, this was the illusions that Americans hold about who they are and the greatness and marvelous state of the world's most democratic superpower. And these are all illusions that we create. They might be right or wrong or good or bad, but they are illusions. So all the illusions you have about yourself as a separate person, as a physical form, is illusory. That means it's acquired. It's not that it's wrong or, it doesn't have any, that we should have no illusions about ourselves. But it's this investigation of the illusions we create that the Buddha was pointing to. He gave us the right to investigate the illusions, to see the impermanence, the unreality of the illusions that we hold as our real world, or what we regard as true and right, and the prejudices we might be conditioned by of what's wrong and who's to blame. So this realm that we're experiencing, a country like the UK, it's a stable country, democratic country, and it's, for human existence, I find it quite a pleasant place to live. I've lived here now nearly 40 years, so it's been a very pleasant experience. But also the illusions that people hold about the United Kingdom, about the British Empire, about England and Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland and all like that. If I say they're all illusions, how does that affect you? Does it mean it's false or it's wrong? Or is it just something that isn't ultimately true? Not based on real investigation of Dhamma. Not through insight, not through enlightenment. So I found this teaching of the Buddha, a brilliant gift to humanity, because just in his first sermon, the Four Noble Truths, there are three aspects to each truth, and all these insights we get through contemplating these truths lead us to enlightenment. It's very clear and very simply presented in just this basic teaching, the first sermon of the Buddha. And yet this teaching is very old. It's not like modern psychology or science or therapy. For most of us, 2,564 years is a long, long time. It's all antique, ancient. And we have the illusion that we've improved everything over the years. That with modern science, psychology, physics, all the wonders of modern science is an improvement. And in many ways it is, in terms of the conditioned realm, the material realm. Modern governments, basically democratic systems, are, improvement over old tribal forms of behavior or separate kingdoms that endlessly fought against each other. Feudalism or development of colonial empires, things like that. Now we have United Nations and organizations that we can see the planet Earth going to the moon. I remember when they landed on the moon back in the 70s, when the photographs taken of planet Earth from the moon was stunning. Suddenly, the United States, the United Kingdom, Ukraine, Russia, Thailand, Sri Lanka, didn't seem terribly important because there was a sense of wholeness for planetary life. That we weren't just independent countries fighting for our own rights at the expense of everyone else. And yet, the human ego, they can spend our lives, fighting the world and condemning the people around us, the conventions around us, because we find no unity, no perfection through what we see, hear, smell, taste, touch, think, or feel. But in Dhamma, even the earth is an illusion, planetary, sun and moon, stars, solar system, Milky Way, all those distant, remote conditions that we can only vaguely see through our eyes. So then we have the word Dhamma, which in this tradition we use from the Pali translation, trying to translate Pali into English or European languages. We have this mysterious word Dhamma. For those of you from Thailand, this is part of your cultural conditioning. From Sri Lanka or India. But what is the Dhamma? And so this is a question I always like to ask myself. If I'm taking refuge in the Dhamma, what am I taking refuge in? And then it's translated into English as ultimate reality, which is probably the best translation. But even the word Dhamma is a word, is a creation, is a sankhara. So if it's apparent here and now, then what can it be in the reality of this moment? And so then we can imagine some kind of mystical force or energy in the universe, some kind of metaphysical reality that we can't really relate to, but we believe in. So Dhamma becomes a kind of abstract idea of perfection or wholeness or completeness, ultimate truth, ultimate reality, the absolute. So these words like the absolute are oftentimes what we use to define the Pali word Dhamma. But what is it that the ascetic Gautama realized on this day, full moon of May? And because certainly the human form, born into a princely family in very fortunate conditions, and then before the body, after it grew up, became an ascetic, became a sadhu, learned all the kind of yogic practices of the time that are available in India at that time. So, he gave up the kind of princely conditions that he was born into to become an ascetic, a sadhu, one who gives up those kind of conditions, privileged conditions, the shaven head, the robes and that are a sign of this kind of traditional giving up the worldly conditions, that, the pleasures of the sense world, not to use that as our main source of inspiration or seeking, but to investigate what is life all about, what is the meaning, what is the purpose, what happens after death. And so this idea of spiritual searching, so still the ascetic Gautama is no longer Prince Siddhartha. He gave up the title. Ascetic Gautama went to the great teachers of that time to find out what is this all about, this life in this form. certainly the palace life with all its privileges and sensual pleasures, when you're born into such privileged conditions, why would you give them up? What is there about us that would give up these very fortunate conditions to go off into the forest and become an ascetic? Because a human being is an opportunity for enlightenment, for understanding the way things are. That's our gift as being born in these forms of what we call human beings. And yet humanity, so much of humanity is obsessed with wealth and power, trying to get, the biggest mansion, the biggest yacht, have the most accumulated wealth and over anyone else, and have powerful positions, politicians. These are very attractive goals in terms of worldly attractions, where poverty is not attractive. Giving up all, your power, your wealth, your family, your palaces, all your beautiful friends, to go off into the forest. Why would anyone do that? So in this tradition, we have this occasion to reflect on Visākha Puja. The enlightenment is here and now. It's not something that you have to go up to the forest to find, or you have to give up your wealth and your position in society, but to awaken. Suffering, there is suffering. And the First Noble Truth points to that. He isn't saying, life is just suffering and misery and that's it. It's not like pessimistic view. As sometimes it can be interpreted. When we think of, why didn't the Buddha, first time, talk about universal love, about inspiring things, about inspiring perceptions? Why didn't he teach about perfection and love and all the inspired words that you could imagine in your life would inspire us? But suffering is not an inspiring word. In Pali, it's dukkha, translated into English as suffering. And the statement wasn't saying everything is miserable and horrible, but there is suffering. It should be understood. So the Buddha, began to understand all his attempts as a separate person, as a sadhu, an ascetic, as a personality, a separate form, to attain refined states of concentration, to explore the deva realms and all the more refined states of conscious possibilities, still were unsatisfied because they're illusions. They have no stability. So then, seeing through the illusions of a samana, of an ascetic, of a spiritual seeker, the idea of sitting under the Bodhi tree, a place of enlightenment, and just investigating, looking inward, not trying to refine anything or develop any special conditioned states that are very dependent on other conditions, but just pure aware, here and now, mindfulness to see the way things are. So the teaching is all conditions are impermanent. So in this simple teaching, this is what Dhamma is, to realize all conditions are impermanent. That's their very nature. Earth, fire, water, and air, impermanent. Space. Conditions need space. And what is aware of space and conditions is consciousness. So we tend to limit ourselves to consciousness through the senses. So we're aware of objects of sense. Looking at you, that's eye consciousness. So my vision at this age is not very good. So you're all a bit hazy. So even you in the front, I can't see your features. And I used to have perfect vision when I was young. I could have been an airplane pilot, an astronaut, but they didn't have astronauts yet when I was young. So this was, and now, I wouldn't even ask for be an airplane pilot or an astronaut. So a Buddhist monk is something to appreciate. Being an old Buddhist monk at this time is a great privilege, because the Buddhist teaching is one that to me is absolutely brilliant, and which I have no doubts about. I've had this lifetime, a lifetime to investigate these Four Noble Truths. Not just think about them and analyze them, and it's not about analysis or there's only four, so it's quite simple. It's not a complicated list of things you have to know, even though Pali Buddhism can sound incredibly complicated. When you study Abhidhamma, that's incredibly complicated lists of all different possible conditioned states, because the conditioned states are endless. Trying to record them all the conditioned states that are possible for human beings, give them titles, list them in order, 1, 2, 3, ABC order. But the Four Noble Truths is quite manageable. And the first two Noble Truths are about inquiring, investigation into the way it is. Suffering is like this. It's not about getting rid of suffering. It's not about, trying to not suffer anymore, but use the suffering that we have in our daily lives here and now to observe it. It's like this. So in the aging process, old age, a lot of physical limitations, stiff joints, and senses deteriorating. I'm unable to walk very well. And if I identify with the form, this old body, and that's my reality, then old age is suffering. But in investigation of Dhamma, the realization that I'm not this physical body, this physical body is doing what it's supposed to do, get old. That's its destiny, that's its fate. And is that what I really am, an old body? When I was born, I was just an infant, a baby. Then I became a boy, and then a teenager, and then a youth, and then middle-aged, and on it goes. We have these different labels for different periods of a lifespan. All conditions are impermanent, and this is not a belief. It's not like you have to believe that. It's a statement about the way things are, and to be investigated for ourselves. We can actually witness change through the senses. And even the senses themselves change. Just watching the degeneration of sight and hearing in this body is like this. There's a witnessing to the visionary problems I have at this age, the hearing problems, as well as, not being able to see that clearly or hear that well, is like this. If I am this human form, then that's suffering. The body is its very nature to suffer. Because it gets old, there's disease, sickness, death. But are we this form? Is this our true identity? Is this our meaning in life, this limited form? And this is a question I encourage you to ask yourself. So what is aware of the aging process, the dim vision and the hearing problems? The hearing problems, they're dependent on the organ of the ear, the eyes for sight. And so that's degenerating. But the awareness of degeneration, what is it that's aware of fading vision and hearing? The aging of the body, of physical disabilities, of sickness, and so forth. What is aware of it? And that is conscious awareness. We call it mindfulness, so conscious awareness. And that's what I found is the ultimate reality. Because nothing's left to, as you sort through even the limitations of language, thoughts, perceptions, memories, physical conditions, objects of the senses, the whole conditioned realm is available for investigation. And if you can find anything lasting, permanent, or stable in any conditioned form. So we have a lot of fears now about climate change, because the climate of Earth is changing. We don't want it to change. We want it to be stable like it has been for the past few decades. In our lifetime, we don't want famine and floods and earthquakes and volcanoes and pollution and all the rest. These are things we don't want. But change is the way things are. The conditioned realm is all about change. What is it that is aware of change? What is it that can have first-hand knowledge of all conditions are impermanent without grasping the words themselves, without just believing the words because the Buddha said that. He wasn't making doctrinal proclamations that we have to believe and grasp, but suggestions, way of investigating the experience of conscious awareness. Then we can, then we have this mysterious one, Sape Dhamma Anatta, all Dhamma is not self, there's not personal, in other words. There's nothing personal in conscious awareness. When you become a person, you have to think, you have to believe, you have to pull out your passport, look at your reflection in a mirror. You have a name, you each have separate names, and we're individuals in forms and conditions. But what is unitive, what is whole, is Dhamma, which we can realize through investigating, through wise contemplation, wise reflection on the way it is. And what is it that can wisely reflect is not just words, Pali concepts, or any religion, but just conscious awareness that is available to every single one of us here and now. So death, the traditional Buddha, his body got old, got sick and died, just like these forms. So we celebrate what is important between the birth of the Buddha and the death of the body was the enlightenment. This is why we remember him, because of his basic teaching, his establishment of that teaching in a very clear way that's now universal, appreciated universally. So I offer this as a reflection for this special day.
Anvayam Dhammagata Sadhukarang Dadamase
Luang Por, since you will be aiming to set off on your travels early tomorrow morning, and this is the last time that the resident community and so many of the lay community will be in your presence, we'd like to take the opportunity to ask for forgiveness and to take leave